The winning lifestyle's not for everybody, but somebody's got to live it. So welcome back to Winning Lifestyle Podcast. This is your host, David Shen. And today we got Patrick Donabedian. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You nailed it pretty well, yeah.
Nice.
The Armenian pronunciation is Donabedian.
Donabedian.
But
I like it.
I just tell Americans Donabedian.
Nice. Yeah. And then if they pronounce it wrong, you kind of like throw them into a jiu-jitsu hold or something, right?
Yeah, I'll choke you out.
And then we also got Chaz Ultra. I'm going to test him out as my new co-host.
What's happening?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, Patrick, tell me about your jiu-jitsu journey.
Ooh, my jiu-jitsu journey. Where to start? I guess I'll start with, I was a baseball player for like 15 years of my life. Mm-hmm. And I was, I played at, that culminated in playing at the University of Miami. I was good, but not good enough. So I ended up getting cut from the team my second year. And that's when I knew I wanted to not just be a meathead weightlifter in the gym. Yeah. So there was a jiu-jitsu club on campus. I always wanted to try it. And I showed up, got strangled over and over and over by this like little 145 pound, Vietnamese kid.
Yeah.
And I was like a 210 pound, like 450 pound squat baseball player.
Damn.
And so that made me a believer. My ego was bruised in that moment, but I knew like, man, if I can just learn like 5% of what he just did to me, like imagine what I could do with my frame and muscle. So yeah, the crazy part is, because it's just, super long story short, is within 3 months of training jiu-jitsu, I signed up at a gym and got obsessed with it over the summer break between my sophomore and junior year of college. I knew within 3 months that I loved jiu-jitsu way more than I loved baseball. And I'd done baseball, like I said, for 15 years.
Yeah.
And I was still, terrible at jiu-jitsu, but it was just crazy, like how much it clicked compared to something I had done for so long. So yeah.
And you won some championships, right?
Jiu-jitsu was, yeah. As a hobbyist, like throughout my 20s, I competed in a bunch of tournaments and I won. And then I won some major qualifiers that eventually put me against the like number one greatest of all time, Gordon Ryan.
Oh shoot.
And that kind of like gave me the confidence and kind of the timing of the market and jiu-jitsu becoming popular. It gave me the impetus to just go full time with jiu-jitsu.
Oh, so, nice. Yeah. So you're doing this full time? So this is your full time job?
Yes.
Jiu-jitsu. Oh, okay, awesome. And you have a school, right?
No, I actually have every kind of business you could have in jiu-jitsu except the actual gym. Right. I work with gyms, mainly 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu headquarters in downtown LA. Because there's like 100. There's over 100 10th Planet franchises all over the world. So I run the early morning program there, and I have private clients. I have online offers and an apparel brand called Day Slayer Apparel.
Is it more so that you bring clients, or like they know to go there to find people like you?
Yeah, good question. It's basically I work on every part of the jiu-jitsu customer journey, from getting them in the door to, selling them on, jiu-jitsu, to coaching them and taking them all the way from white belt to black belt, hopefully. So, because my mission overall is to bring jiu-jitsu to people from all walks of life, from young people to old people, kids to women. And so I've mainly, with my early morning program, I've mainly made jiu-jitsu like a lot more available to like men, kind of working professionals in their 30s and 40s, some guys in their 20s, who, have busy jobs and businesses and careers, CEOs, lawyers, doctors, actors, creatives. And yeah, just make it a game that they can play. 'Cause it is violent. It is physical. But it's also it's like the best game in town.
Yeah.
Chess with human body parts. So
Right. So I was gonna ask, like, with the advent of UFC, it seems like jiu-jitsu, boxing, those two kind of rose to the top in terms of like what you need to know to learn how to beat people up.
Mhm.
So have you ever been in a real fight?
That's funny you asked that. It's one of the most common questions I get. So I have been in scuffles, but my story is that basically the reason why jiu-jitsu was so attractive to me was that as a kid, I was a really late bloomer. And so when I was like in 10th grade, I was still like 5'2". I was at an all boys school, all boys Catholic school in the Valley in LA. And it was like kind of a rough crowd. And I got bullied a lot. And I like kind of got in some scuffles, didn't win any situations. I got punched a few times. I mostly just backed down from shit. And there was like some gnarly shit that happened. And I mostly backed down. It was like basically cowardice. And I just had I had no plan. And like I said, I didn't have the size or strength or really like aggression. And so that was kind of like a wound I had growing up, because once I became like this kind of big buff baseball player, I kind of, I was no longer that little kid anymore, but I still felt like that inside a little bit. And so that's what jiu-jitsu meant to me in the beginning. But the ironic part is that once I became an adult in my 20s and 30s, like I have all those scraps in the gym now, and I don't give off that energy when I'm out. And I don't go out till like, I'm not at bars at 2 a.m. really. That's not my lifestyle. So, so yeah, it's like, I probably will get in, a prolonged fight at some point in my life, because there's going to be probably some situation where I need to protect someone, or maybe someone will come at me. And I kind of hope for that.
Really?
But it'll be like, I feel like it'll be like older in age. So, but yeah, no crazy war stories, to be honest.
But there's something about like martial arts that's like kind of peaceful, even though it is like, like self-defense and everything like that. But it is kind of like an art form. It's not inherently like about harming others or things like that. Yeah.
You hope that you're doing it for self-defense motivations and not for like just to go out and hunt people down for sport. Honestly, like the way I think of it is like what self-defense and being able to win a fight is what gets people in the door, but what gets people to keep coming back is the mental part, is the part where you are learning, you're training your brain to address this combat situation, not in a fight or flight state, not from our reptile brain, but from an executive state of, okay, I see there's a problem in front of me, facing resistance. There's a decision tree available to me. And I can, as long as I keep my attention on my opponent, I can make reads. I can deal with the situation. But a lot of times we don't have access to that level of that cogence and that
cogence. I like
that critical thinking, because we are stuck in this. I see red, bro.
Because like I think about that too. Like I was actually at a club until like 2 a.m. last night. But like you see a lot of people with like so much testosterone, but like I wonder how many of those people actually have black belts in jiu-jitsu. Like they have so much testosterone, but like like if you were to walk in there, like, and I feel like you're just so articulate, you could just kind of avoid those fights,
Yeah. I walk in, I wear my black belt when I go out to clubs, just tie it up. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, but I like that you mentioned that there's so much testosterone, because that is something that as men, we are both burdened and blessed with, this testosterone coursing through our veins. And we got to do something with it. If we don't do something with it in the gym, or in other things, whether it's like
basketball,
or even just like
baseball.
Like one of the reasons why I'm not as critical of like capitalism as some other people are, is that it gives men especially a channel to compete. And I like that. And like go compete with others in a non-violent way. But we like physicalizing things is great, and jiu-jitsu is one of the best metaphors for physicalizing that aspect of competition, using testosterone to produce something productive and not destructive. So yeah, I think a lot of those guys in the club just like gotta use their testosterone for something besides like, can I swear on this?
Yeah,
for something besides just like trying to fuck hoes or
they just get frustrated and they just want to fight, and it's like you got so much energy, and like you said, like basketball too, like because we all go through this, like you want to do good in basketball, but then there are kids that are just better, and then you're like, damn, I don't know about you guys, but I start sizing them up like, well, you're better at basketball, but let me see if I can beat this guy up. Or I'm thinking it, but not actually like trying to do anything. But like that's something that like Mike Tyson was saying on one of the podcasts. Like what he does is he goes through life thinking like, oh, like can I size this guy up? Like everybody is out to possibly kill me. It's crazy.
So he said he currently does that.
Yeah, like did you see the Logan Paul podcast with Mike Tyson?
I didn't see that clip. I saw some clips. I'm aware that it happened.
Yeah, I saw the whole thing. It was funny as hell. Like he was saying how in his life he kind of goes through with old Mike Tyson just under the surface, and at any time he could just break out, but he just end up in handcuffs.
Right? Yeah, we do have that. So especially when I first started jiu-jitsu, a mental game I used to play with myself is I was like kind of a 3-stripe white belt or blue belt, a little bit insecure still like wanting to prove that I'm a man and I can fight.
Yeah.
And like the game I'd play with myself was any like bar or like room I entered, basically. I would just like look at everyone and be like, would I be the last man standing here?
Yeah.
And the bigger there's some guys who lift heavy metal and they're huge. They're good guys that are 250, 300 pounds of muscle. And I would just feel like, I like be crafting my plan. Like, okay, I go for a single leg, not a double leg, because he's too big, and I'd probably have to jump on his back because I couldn't hold him down, and I have to choke him, or I might have to leg lock him because he's too big. Or this smaller guy, okay, I'll just get a body lock, and it's kind of sick. Yeah. But that's right, like Mike Tyson said, that's kind of like right under the surface. Yeah. And we, in this civilized world we live in, we tend to forget that's right under the surface.
That's so funny that you say, because like that kind of goes through my head sometimes. It's like, if I were to fight this guy, like this guy's giving me issues, like what would I do? Whereas in like the clubs, I bet like all the girls are thinking like, oh, these guys just want to fuck. But in reality, we're also thinking about how to fight too.
Yeah, so those are the two drive, like our most animal based drivers. It's violence and sex, and and obviously as someone who tries to imitate Christ, we're trying to live above that, but to ignore that exists is not living above that. That's awareness of our,
and I think we all have like these urges too. Like we have these thoughts, but like as long as we kind of control them and we're trying to be good people, like sometimes I think about things, but as a joke too, like thinking about how like oh, can I beat this guy up? Like it's not that I would actually act upon that, and like if somebody beats me in basketball, I'm like, damn, well, you're just a lanky ass dude. Like maybe I could beat you up or something, You can't beat me in everything,
Yeah, it's funny. I remember back when Dana White was like really having to heavily market the UFC to tell people like, oh, why is fighting worth watching when people weren't watching as much. He would always say that like when there's in a baseball game or a basketball game, when a brawl breaks out, that's when all eyes go to the field. That's when the highlights really, those are the highlights that show on SportsCenter. Yeah. And at the end of the day, like we are attracted to fighting, and all these ball sports, like throwing a ball through a circle, or running across a line, or hitting a ball and running in circles with baseball. It's all kind of silly because we're all just like, it's all just a metaphor for mano y mano, who's the better man. Yeah. And so it often, once that metaphor runs to conclusion, the lanky guy beats you in basketball, then you're like, okay, well, it's in the parking lot now. Let's do the real thing. And that's in our base nature. And I think it's better to play play in that space rather than to just reactively go there. Without a plan.
Yeah, I like that.
So is it like, it's not like, it's a matter of maybe self-control? And if that's the case, what do you do to bring those parts of you under the authority of your conscious, mind, your executive brain, like you're talking about?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I probably don't suffer from the issue that a lot of men suffer from, why a lot of men get into jiu-jitsu, because there's two types of people that get into jiu-jitsu. One are the over aggressive types, and they just snap and they just see red. They go into fight state real quick, and they need the gym as an outlet to get that aggression out, but also as a practice to like direct it and, like you said, control it, or maybe a better word is like harness it or wrangle it. And then there's people more like me who are kind of more naturally passive, either because they have childhood wounds where they were like I said, a late bloomer, they got bullied, and they learned to just kind of fly under the radar, back down from fights, kind of just like become invisible. And for us, it's about flexing that aggression muscle and learning and like practicing using it. So it's control. There's the better word than control is probably
articulation. Maybe?
Yeah, integration into your personality and into your physicality.
Yeah.
Did that answer your original question? Or
yeah, I think so. Because I mean, that's one thing I think about is like, it's about just kind of becoming a full person, right? And like, not like, you have to know that you are created in the image of God, but at the same time, we do have a nature in ourselves that I think it's super destructive. And, even in thoughts and stuff like that, these types of things can permeate into other areas of life and the other ways that we conduct ourselves. So I would imagine that, it's self-control comes like you can gain that through discipline. So jiu-jitsu is a great discipline in that sense. It's like you're denying certain things of yourself for a more long-term gain in that sense.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And I feel like wordplay, like articulation with how you speak, is also kind of like jiu-jitsu too, because like you need to know the right words to say and the right way to phrase them just to avoid conflicts too. And just like when you do jiu-jitsu, I don't know if you've done jiu-jitsu too, Chaz, but it's like you got to have a lot of tools in your toolbox. Like you have like a counter for every attack somebody has against you, and then they have a counter for that. And like jiu-jitsu is such a beautiful sport. You've done jiu-jitsu, Chaz?
I have not done jiu-jitsu, no.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, I used to go to UFC gym in San Jose and then down here for a little bit. And, dude, I learned so much about jiu-jitsu. Like, I love boxing, but jiu-jitsu is just fun, man. Like you said, it's a chess match.
What do you feel like what made it more like a chess match than boxing from your experience?
I mean, boxing was like very physical. They're both very physical. But like jiu-jitsu, I had to use my brain. I had to use my memory, like thinking like, what do I have to do in this position? Like I have to be very specific with like where I put my arms, or else I can end up in an arm bar. Or I have to like make sure I got to protect like my neck. I got to do a lot of things. Whereas like in boxing, where there are things that you can that could really mess you up. Like if you drop your hands and then you get punched in the face. But like largely, you don't have to remember that many things. You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little simpler and also higher stakes. Jiu-jitsu is a little more forgiving because you're not, even if you're going 100%, person has a chance to tap before damage happens. Whereas, striking martial art, once you're hit, you have a concussion if you're going 100%. But yeah. And that's what makes jiu-jitsu satisfying, because you can go 100% and know like, oh, this worked. And this, without, like I said, everyone gets to go home fairly unscathed.
Like I'm a physical therapist, and I see a lot of LAPD, and they do what they call Archon. It's like arrest and control. And a lot of times what they do is jiu-jitsu, because like you said, you could try to submit them before trying to throw any punches. And then usually when your arm's about to snap, you're like, okay, just let me out. Let me just, get handcuffed or whatever you want me to do, type of deal.
Yeah. It's important to know that there's chokes, submissions, and then there's joint locks. Yeah. And it's important to know that they're locks. They're not necessarily breaks.
Yeah.
So a lock is something that controls something and you can hold it in place for a while.
Yeah.
So it's like, but the lock, there's a threshold between lock and break, and eventually there is a break. There's a snap of something.
Oh, okay.
And so I generally think of, like, I try to tell my students, don't have like a 1% rule or a 10-second rule on every submission where you're like, you're increasing the force applying on that submission like by just like 1% per second. So it would last like 100 seconds.
Yeah.
Because most people, like, they see like, oh, this is the opportunity to like crank the leg lock or like really finish the choke, and they just go 0 to 100 real quick. And that's bad for two reasons. One, people can get injured, but two is like sometimes the sub is not on. It's just like not applied right. And you run out of steam, you run out of range to finish it, and then you have nothing. And there's no worse feeling than having someone in a fully sunken submission that you can't finish. Yeah. You gas out your energy squeezing, and then they escape and get on top of you and smash you.
You ever fought anybody on roids? Like, not you on roids. Oh
yeah.
You been on roids?
No. I fought people on roids. Yeah.
Oh, shoot. So they probably go 0 to 100 like that.
I don't know. I mean, the most famous guy that I've faced on that's pretty openly on steroids is Gordon Ryan.
Oh, the guy you're talking about.
Yeah. So, but he's not. I mean, he's as technical as it gets. He's the best in the world for a reason. Beyond steroids, beyond hype. Like,
so hold on. So you fought the best jiu-jitsu fighter in the world?
That's my claim to fame.
Yeah. That's crazy. So,
that's dope.
Did you fight him in a like a televised thing or whatever it is?
Yeah, it was on UFC Fight Pass back in 2018 or 2019. I had won EBI qualifier, Eddie Bravo Invitational qualifier in the absolute division. Mm-hmm. So that was like guys in, from 200 to 300 pounds basically, and I was like 190 at the time, 195 maybe. And Gordon was a pretty big guy at that time. He had just won ADCC, which is like the Olympics of jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And so he was the number 1 seed in that tournament. And I was like a unknown guy, lower seed. I was still a brown belt at the time, but I won this qualifier tournament against all these like heavyweight guys. And so then I won the first round of my bracket, and then I faced Gordon in the quarterfinal. And so, yeah, he did beat me. As much as I'd want to just like make up a story about
lifestyle, though, man.
But
you'd be a star if he didn't.
Dude, that's so
I convinced myself in the moment that like, I'm gonna leg lock this guy because that was the strongest part of my game at the time.
How did you do in the fight? Like, how did it?
Not that good, to be honest. Like he's better than me. Like,
but he's on roids though. Right?
He's on roids. The way that roids work in jiu-jitsu, to answer your original question, it's not about just like being aggro and being able to rip stuff, and like it's about being able to recover so you can train more and build more skills. Because that's the name of the game in jiu-jitsu. It's like, how much mat time can you get in? Yeah. And so, for most of these guys, when I decided to go full time, I was training twice a day, 6 days a week. Yeah. Some combination of hard sparring, strength conditioning, drilling. Yeah. And that's a young man's game. It takes a toll on your body. The recovery is hard. And so, but if you can do that, you build the skills. So like that match with Gordon really that was a huge inflection point for my game personally, because I felt what the next level feels like. He was that next level. It wasn't strength or pressure that I felt. It was like precision and speed and like dilemmas. He was setting traps, and he led me into one of those traps, and it was a beautiful thing. And I studied it. I probably studied his game the most out of anybody. And it's, the steroids help for sure. The extra testosterone helps, but but he's the best for a reason beyond that.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking like steroids, if you use it for injury recovery, and this is like a very controversial opinion, but like I'm studying for my CSCS, it's for strength and conditioning within physical therapy. And like one of the biggest telltale signs is like recovery that's not normal, like not naturally that fast. Like somebody could sprain their ankle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 days later, it's all better. Or somebody could sprain their MCL, which could take like a month, and it's better in like a week. So then as PTs, we kind of look for those signs. We're like, okay, that's not right. If somebody's healing that quickly, they're on roids, right? And they could hurt other people. They could hurt themselves. But like if somebody does get a bad injury, like you could be in a Gamora, and then if you sprain your labrum, like you sprain your capsule.
Oh, yeah.
I would say like those capsules, sometimes they last a long time. Like your shoulder capsule could just stay loose, unless you possibly take steroids. And then, because you have these time frames when you heal, right? If you pass that time frame, that labor's not going to get that much better. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
So, like, not that I'm promoting steroids, but
no, I mean, there's things that, biohacking, and there's peptides now, there's testosterone therapy, there's all these things that I look into and I strongly consider for my future. As someone who's extremely physical, and I need physical energy, that raw energy, as well as the ability to recover my muscles and joints and bones. It's got to be on the table. So I want to do it in a way that's, sustainable and not have horrible side effects. But yeah, it's something I'll, continue to consider as I age.
Yeah. And I think of it like ethically too. Like you don't want to hurt anybody, and you want to think like, what would Jesus do? But, there were no steroids back then, but like, as long as you don't hurt anybody, like, and you're doing it to help yourself, maybe it could be a good idea. And I'm not promoting steroids, but just saying.
I mean, there's certain ones that cause like roid rage. Like I think I'm really not educated on this, but ones like Trenibol and
Trembling.
Is that how you say it? Trenibol?
Oh yeah, I think so.
And then there's another one that's super, just it makes you pretty aggro. But yeah, ultimately there's levers we can pull before we go down that intense route, like optimizing your sleep and just being physically active, especially when you don't want to be. That'll also increase your testosterone and just your motivation to, be healthy.
Yeah, my coach, because I used to swim, he'd always say like, the days you don't want to go to practice and you go anyways, those are the days you get better.
Yeah,
because it's like it shocks your body through like muscles confusion.
Yeah, that's the leap of faith that we have to. It doesn't seem like it's like, oh, everything's telling you, your body's sending you signals. Don't like rest. Keeps telling you rest, and you start generating excuses like, I feel an ache here, a pain there. I have too much work to do. But and that's where it like takes a leap of faith that I regard on a religious level. Like, no, we got to generate movement. We got to like go outside. I just do like push-ups sometimes just to like start to get that wind that dial.
And you got me too. I'm a physical therapist, so we got a good I feel like there's always that parallel, or the yin and yang. Like you tear people's shoulders, and then I fix people's shoulders.
Yeah, we got a good racket here. We can go into business together.
Yeah, for sure. Like you just send them back to business together. That's funny as hell, man. Yeah. So speaking of business, you also have your own podcast, right?
I do. Yeah, it's in the very early stages, but yeah.
Nice. What's the name of the podcast?
It's called the Day Slayer Podcast.
Day Slayer. How did you come up with that name?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was originally the nickname for my morning jiu-jitsu program, because I wanted to become an early morning person for a long time, and wake up at 5 or 6 a.m. and jog or journal or just meditate, do something that I heard that like super high performing people did. Those horrible people that are just up early. And but it never came naturally to me. I was not a morning person, and so I knew how can I do this? If I create a and that was when jiu-jitsu was starting to take off in general and for me. And so I was like, okay, if there's 20 people waiting outside of a gym at 6 a.m., that'll probably get me out of bed. That'll motivate me.
Yeah.
And that'll get me to go to bed earlier at night. And so I created a jiu-jitsu program, my jiu-jitsu business basically, from that motivation. And then that started to build, and there were more and more people that wanted to train early. Because that wasn't a thing back then. Like morning jiu-jitsu workouts weren't a thing. As it wasn't very popular, but it grew, and we started calling ourselves Day Slayers because the name is like get up and get after it, slay the day.
That's what.
So your ultimate, because we construct enemies. We put the devil in so many, in politicians, in our rival coworker, in just we project it outward, but really like the enemy is within.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's good to symbolize the enemy in something not always inside you, because that can turn into like self-criticism. So I
will say sometimes the enemy is in other people for sure.
True.
Yeah.
True. But how we are victorious against them is usually in how we regulate ourselves. It starts with ourselves, and then we can strategically and tactically deal with them more effectively. Because those people are a tool for our growth ultimately. Your
coworkers, you could just like fight them technically, right? Because you're a jiu-jitsu fighter, so you could just like, hey, let's just roll, man. Hey, how you doing? Let's just roll.
We could just hammer it out
a little
on the mat,
arm bar or something. Oh, whoopsies! I didn't think that would pop just now.
Yeah,
but yeah, there's definitely some questionable people out there, but like I always say too, like you can control what you can do, and instead of like having that victim mentality, like, oh man, I was a late bloomer, or I'm a 5'8" Chinese guy, like, man, I should be better at basketball. But it's like, you can work on yourself and become a winner in different ways. That's more fitting. I'm not meant to be in the NBA, but maybe I can do jujitsu, or physical therapy.
Yeah, I saw this meme one time where it was like a crayon looking at a pencil, and it said the crayon had a thought bubble that said, I'm not sharp enough. And then the pencil had this thought that said, I'm not colorful enough.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That self-critic is always alive and well. And we have a duty to ourselves and just to reality is that no one's coming to save us. So when we start to feel self-pity for our circumstances, that feels good for like a couple seconds, but then you very quickly just fall back into you put more space between where you're currently at and your dreams. And usually the bridge between you and your dreams is a little bit of pain and a little bit of doing things you don't want to do. And that's where the discipline kicks in. That's where the willingness to take risk kicks in. And the day when you ask about what's the essence, what's the meaning behind Day Slayer, like how it started isn't always like how it, the meaning it takes on later, but like for now the meaning it's taken on is like the mission is how to make hard things feel good. Because I know that hard things are usually what stand between us and where we want to go. And like I said, the blessing of testosterone as men is that we have this fuel source. We have this raw fuel source to kind of push through that resistance. And in both in physical ways, but also in mental ways to get to, being able to build our own kingdom and build, a little kingdom within the kingdom of God. And so, man,
like that's,
I don't know. I was just going to ask a question because you're talking about like building a kingdom, like within the kingdom and everything. But you also said the viewpoint that, which I'm just interested where the assumption comes from, that you said like nobody comes to save us. Do you think there's no help?
No, there's definitely help. One of my favorite phrases is ask who, not how. It's always another human, that is coming to help us, but there's no one coming to help in terms of our inner wounds. The things that cause us to feel self-pity because, I got bullied as a kid, or someone else maybe, I got molested, or I got rejected. My parents didn't I'm not talking about myself right now, but like there's a lot of people who like their dad left them or their their mom didn't love them enough. And we're very few people had a perfect environment and upbringing.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Some do, and some were just like naturally resilient. Some were naturally taught like exactly how to deal with problems. But ultimately, like the task is on us to parent ourselves. And usually that has to happen for men, I feel like late 20s, early 30s, maybe mid 30s is when we can't keep running on purely adrenaline and cortisol to like power through. And we actually have to integrate we can't just keep gnawing on the wound. We actually have to do the healing.
Yeah.
So that's the inner work.
Yeah.
Because, obviously the Day Slayer brand and the culture is about doing the physical external work.
Yeah.
Self-improvement and getting your money up, getting your fitness up. But the inner work is where, like you just asked Chaz, is like, that's where no one's coming to save us. If we just keep,
it's so hard mentally. Like when, like waking up at 5 a.m. I had this guest on here like 2 weeks ago, and like I was saying, the audio didn't clip, so I had to get a new laptop, making sure it wouldn't happen again. This kid, he plays professional soccer, wakes up at 5 a.m. every day, practices for like 2 hours, goes to school because he's still in high school, and then he goes to practice again, goes to sleep at like 9 p.m., does that every day for like the whole week. So it's like, damn, like when I was in high school, I skipped school some days, like to have that habit so early on, so he wouldn't have to do that when he's older. Is so tremendous. His parents are really good. Like they did a really good job with him.
Yeah. There's certain that we all have certain, just like we have certain wounds growing up, we also have certain blessings. So there's just things that you're just forced into when you're young, and they build this like perma, I don't know why I'm saying permafrost, but this like, for example, like this is just like a vanity example. I was in a baseball camp for like 2 summers in a row, and we had this track coach, and she forced us to just do like thousands and thousands of abs every day, like crunches and all this crazy strength and conditioning. And I just like, that gave me a permanent 6-pack. Yeah. And I haven't had to work for it. And like, I'm not going to show it right now. Cause that would be douchey.
You got to, yeah. Now that you're talking a big game, and man,
I know. I
could say I have a 6-pack, but I don't want to show it though.
It's on. Trust me, I've posted thirst traps on my social media. You can look me up. And it's not in perfect shape right now, but it's like jiu-jitsu helps also. But it's just like the things that happen at that like your age between 12 to 18, that you're just kind of forced to, like, those have permanent effects because our brains are still in development and our bodies are still in development. And for some reason, I just like, it's the hardest part for me physically is putting on muscle because I just get too skinny. But you got some
muscle,
got some pipes there. Yeah, I'm not bad. Yeah.
But I'm actually more curious about the 6-pack though. You talk a pretty big game about the 6-pack.
I'm gonna take a few more attempts at moving on from that.
We don't got to take another. All right. But like back to what you were saying, these wounds though, for sure that plays a big part in a lot of the loser lifestyles. And I don't mean to shit on the losing lifestyles or the participation trophy lifestyles. Yeah. It's just with this podcast, we kind of focus on like, what we can do, because a lot of people, they go through things like that. Like growing up, oh, my mom wasn't that good. My dad walked out, so I don't trust anybody. It's like, I get it. I've never been through it. But then are you going to, when is that change going to happen? That, because are you going to just be a prick to people the rest of your life? Or are you going to be like when you hit your late 20s or 30s, be like, how can I fix it? Not thinking about like, oh, why am I doing this? But like, how can I get this done to like change my character? Like I've met so many people like throughout my life. Like I don't say it to them, but like, I'm like, what kind of lifestyle is that? And then it's natural to kind of fall into that lifestyle of just like being lazy and then finding excuses, because it's easier to have an excuse than to push through it. Right. And to like wake up early and work out. And, Yeah, man. Like, it's just a lifestyle. Like, I kind of force myself to push through, like working out, like doing things that I know I don't feel like doing, you know? I just constantly remind myself, like, it's a lifestyle. You know, there are positives to the winning lifestyle. You know, you reap the benefits afterward, but winning lifestyle, you gotta put in the work for it, you know?
You got to put in the work, and you got to know your personal why.
Mm-hmm.
Because initially, you know, we're imitating creatures, and especially as men, women do this with women, but as men, we see other men out there that are living that winning lifestyle
Yeah.
with money and, you know, access to things, and you know, they look fit, whatever, they're fighters, whatever.
Wow.
And our motivation starts out as, you know, wanting to be like them.
Yeah.
But then we soon find out, we start to, like, you either get there, the most common is you fail to get there because there's certain advantages they have, certain physical attributes, etc.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out what are your strengths and weaknesses that'll, you know, get you to, you know, up the hierarchy. But,
yeah. And it's a lonely lifestyle too sometimes, because you see the benefits. Like, you see like the rich people that are driving Maseratis or whatever, but then you don't see the other half of them, like waking up at 5 a.m. And when you wake up at 5 a.m., you're thinking, like, who else is up at 5 a.m.? You know, it's kind of lonely.
Well, there's a whole lot of shit sandwiches you got to eat on the way to anything that's worth achieving.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was going to say is, like, sometimes you do achieve, you get to the top. Like, I got pretty close to the top of jiu-jitsu, but my why was flawed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually
What was your why at that time?
Yeah, my why was proving, because like I said, one of my main wounds was that I was a baseball player and I worked my ass off as a baseball player. Like, I was just like hitting thousands of balls off the tee, taking batting practice. My dad, you know, threw thousands of pitches at me to practice. And I was blocking balls as a catcher. Like, I was drilling, showing up, you know, playing year round. And ultimately, like, I wasn't that naturally talented of a baseball player.
Yeah.
And I know that not because I'm, like, being humble right now, but because I know how easy jiu-jitsu is to me now, and the difference between how that feels. I didn't have to work nearly as hard to get good at jiu-jitsu. But like I said, as I started competing in jiu-jitsu, it became more than just a fun hobby on the side. It was really, I was realizing I was just trying to seek that external validation that I didn't get from baseball.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that was my main motivation, as opposed to something deeper, which I discovered later because of my heritage having to do with my grandfather and my great grandmother. I realized, like, I actually have a deeper, more personal reason why doing something like jiu-jitsu, something that's difficult, something that's high pressure on a stage, is worthwhile. And it's not about becoming like, you know, like the guys that are, you know.
So what is that with the grandma that you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
What's that refined why?
Yeah, so it's kind of a story, but so basically my great grandmother and great grandfather, they survived the Armenian genocide. She specifically, I know I was told this through, you know, family stories, because I never met her, or I was like a little baby, I think, when she was still alive. But yeah, she was, you know, she was captured from her home, forcibly marched across the desert. You know, it's like, say this, but she was, like, raped multiple times by like Turkish soldiers, and, like, lost her 2-year-old son, like, froze in the freezing cold that she and my great grandfather had. They were separated for like 10 years, but they eventually both separated because he had to move to America first to make money to move the whole family over. She moved over eventually, and they ended up living the American dream.
Yeah.
But they went through all that hardship. And then my grandfather on my mom's side, Italian side, he was born in 1922. The stock market crashed. His his father, I believe, worked in finance, and when that happened, his father, my great grandfather, committed suicide.
Ooh.
My grandfather Pat was 8 years old when that happened.
Shit.
And so he went through that, and then like basically his sister and maybe him like literally walked in to find their father hanging like in the garage. It was like that intense, gnarly, and so he had to work through his teenage years to support his mom, living on like a piece of bread and a glass of milk a day in the middle of the Great Depression. Then went and fought in World War II. Saw major action in the Philippines and the Pacific Theater. Like saw a lot of just a lot of his men died, and he had to probably kill a lot of men. So he went through it, and then he came back, lived the American dream. Happiest guy I ever met. Still had more energy than anyone. Like, and so they like lived a hard life. And they like a really hard life. And there's this quote that you guys have probably heard. It's from a novel, but that goes around. It goes something like, hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times.
It's my favorite saying.
Yeah, and there's a lot of truth in it. It's a narrative. Like most narratives, they have aspects of truth and aspects of falsehood. But my insecurity has always been like, oh well, I grew up in good times,
and that made you so the generational traumas that made you better at jiu-jitsu compared to like baseball, you think?
Well, say is, like I said, it was an insecurity that like I'm growing up in good times. So I could become one of the weak men that create hard times. And I don't want to be that guy. So, but I'm living in these good times, and I'm playing baseball and having first world problems. And it's like, I'm going to a high school and I'm getting bullied a little bit. But I'm finding like because I'm a late bloomer, I'm kind of like ineffective in the world. I wasn't even that good in the classroom, even though I was studying hard. I wasn't that good with girls because I was like little kid cute to them. I was just like young. I just like didn't hit puberty till way later.
You're cute though.
But, now I'd want to be called little cute because I'm a little bit getting a little bit older. But anyway, so where was I? So
sports aptitude tests.
But what I'd say is, so it's all about proving my worth to others in the arena of sports. Because jiu-jitsu became that. Jiu-jitsu was the first thing that came like really easy to me. And I could just like, oh, this is finally my thing. I
love jiu-jitsu for that fact because like I did an ice bath yesterday. And it was like a full reset on my mind where it's like, oh, why is it so hard for me to wake up in the morning? Like, why can't I just do it? And then the ice bath was like something that I just had to do. Like I was kind of a pussy when I first jumped in the ice water, but then afterward I was like, damn, like it's a full reset of my adrenaline too. Cause like in jiu-jitsu, I kind of feel that too. I played baseball too. And like, dude, sometimes I'd be like half asleep until the third inning,
So I want to jump on that because that what you said about the ice bath, that's what I realized my why. Making hard things feel good was actually what motivates me most about jiu-jitsu. And knowing that jiu-jitsu is how it was for me in the beginning, and even how it is still now sometimes, how like scary it is that there is an opponent across from you who's maybe bigger and buffer than you, who wants to take your head off. And you're voluntarily going into that arena. And there's a way to make that fun. And somehow my grandfather did that. Like it wasn't fun in the way that we think of fun. But he was able to make decisions in an executive state and not live in a fight or flight state. My great grandfather, my great grandmother coming out of the Armenian genocide. Like, I'm not going to paint a rosy picture. Like they had some probably PTSD that they went through, but they still moved forward to live the American dream. They didn't get hooked on alcohol or drugs or crime. And so personally, I just know that the unlock for life is a willingness to do hard things and play, turn it almost into a game, not in a trivial way, but in a way like, okay, this is my circumstances, and there's nothing more meaningful, there's nothing more exciting than turning that, you know, to use a cliche, just turning that lemon into lemonade.
Yeah.
As opposed to seeking, you know, hedonic pleasure all the time. Because that's how good times create weak men. Is if we just fall into the trap of seeking pleasure. And because, you know, there's a good argument for that. It's like, well, we have nice things available to us.
Yeah.
But, you know, unless you have you're blessed with a really like easygoing disposition, like you're gonna fall into anxiety or depression pretty quickly.
Yeah. So just to all that, like the redefined why that you have, I'm wondering, I guess two things. Like, how does it feel when you're not meeting this goal, right? Like, how does that feel to you?
Right.
No, I'm good.
How does it feel to you? Because almost it's like you're looking at you have a standard that you're trying to meet, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a certain standard, and that's both created by you and by like things that you view in the world and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the first part of my question is, how does that feel when if you didn't meet that standard? And then the second part of the question is, do you think that ultimately your real worth will come from whether or not you meet that standard, you meet that goal?
I think my lived worth will come from that. It depends on what you mean. I'll do a Jordan Peterson move, kung fu move on you. It depends on what you mean by real. But I think, you know, my faith, you know, I think what you're maybe hinting is that your worth can come from your works, or it can come from God and like a priori love. And I'd say that a priori love is what is the first mover. But I know that if I don't value real world material works and doing things in the real world, then I won't have, then I won't feel worth. Like I'll know that I squandered and I didn't really have faith in the first place if I don't actually value. Because like since Plato, we've become conscious of this like two worlds mythology.
I'm like this too.
And so high, that's why I'm leaning forward.
Yeah, I think
I found a position that's working for me.
And so
I mean, we're about like 53 minutes in too. But like
I feel like this is a good, you know.
Well, yeah, I'll just finish this thought. Like that was a precursor to Christianity, and as you know, as Judaism was becoming Christianity for a certain group of people. And so it's constantly been this discussion in our culture in the West, like what matters more, the material world or the spiritual world, the inner world or the outer world. And you know, it's sort of a personality type thing. Some people are really comfortable just living in the spiritual world. Those are the more woo-woo people. And then some people are the hard, you know, the systematic, you know, like the ultimate conclusion of just the material world is like the atheist, the materialistic atheist. And a lot of this, like I said, is dictated by personality type. What people gravitate toward more. I think they both work together, and it's a mistake to over index one of them. So yeah, all I'd say, your original question was, where's your self-worth come from? I'd say it comes from God. Mm-hmm. But in order to honor God, I have to do good works in the world, and I need to be an effective operator in the world, especially as a man. And this is where I think I said personality type, but there's also obviously gender. And as men, like it's just part of our identity. Like we need to go out and get after it and build things. It's what
we got to be productive.
Yeah, and compete.
compete
and fight at things. And now that doesn't mean and be in a fight flight state all the time, because that's where you fail at it, and that's where you don't meet your goals. And I think that's what you're talking about, and you end up getting crushed. And I lived a lot of my life in that fight or flight state, running on adrenaline, and I was getting crushed, and I was falling into depression very frequently. And so my main message that I guess I'm trying to communicate to you guys and to whoever ends up listening to this is the best game in town is hard work.
Yeah.
And jiu-jitsu is my vehicle for that, but there's plenty of other vehicles, business, obviously. But how you play that game will, make, I call it a game for a reason. It's not to trivialize it, but it is to tell you that it can be fun, it can be playful, and it can be smart. It can be it's a mental game as much as it's a physical game.
You heard it here first. The winning lifestyle can be fun too. Just gotta get after it. Well, I gotta say, I think this is a good time to cut this off. I'm a little dying from the heat. There won't be much lifestyle left if we kept going, but dude, we definitely gotta continue this. What?
I said there won't be much left if we disintegrate in the sun.
Not much of a lifestyle left, man. All right, well, thank you so much for coming on, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Dope, man.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Chaz. Yeah.